Welcome to another AVID chat. I'm David Harpole and Jack Arnold joining me as always. Good to see you today.
Good to see you, Dave.
So if you're joining us today, we're going to talk about something that we talk about, quite frankly, all the time. And we have friends amongst ourselves and family. And it really is about real estate. And today it's how can you make money at real estate? Or what are those ways that you could actually make money in real estate? I think we could really talk about this for an hour easily, but we're going to try to be concise. And I think there's a few really good points to make. So let's just start out with maybe what's the right mindset if you're actually thinking about buying real estate. And I say buying real estate because I would say most people associate with like a tangible house or rental property, or Airbnbs now are popular. So in that context, what would be kind of the mindset that would help you potentially make money in real estate?
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems like it's always a big topic. It's always something to talk about. People talk about it all the time. It kind of, it's either talking about the Great Recession when it falls apart, or talking about how great of an investment is. It's like an ongoing conversation. It's like probably one of the top 3 conversations we have is investing in real estate with people. I think one good mindset to have is try to, as much as a lot of people cannot, is to not make it so dogmatic, like it's a religious experience that, purchasing and investing in real estate. It's an asset, and you should weigh it against the pros and cons of investing in it or not investing in it. Real estate is very broad. So saying investing in real estate is good or bad or otherwise is like saying investing in business is good or bad or otherwise. Like some businesses are and some businesses are not, or stocks. Some stocks are and some stocks are not.
Right.
So it's not, when you just say real estate, it's just so many things. It's obviously there's single family homes, which is one, but there's multifamily homes. There's, Amazon distribution warehouses, there's orange groves, there's high-rise downtown, high-rise office buildings, there's office parks. Like it's almost infinite, and all strip
real
malls,
estate investment trusts.
There's all of those things have their own types of risk that come along with it. Some of their own benefits, and they're very different businesses. Although they may fall under the umbrella of real estate, they're all very different. That's like saying investing in a steel manufacturer versus investing in Google. I mean, I guess they're both stocks, but they're just way different from each other. So weigh them on the merits of the actual business. But I do think what we're going to talk about is what most people usually end up talking about is single family homes, right? So I'm going to buy a single family home. I'm going to rent it out, and that's how I'm going to make money on real estate. So that's what we're going to narrow down to.
Yes.
I'm not going to talk about the other things, but whatever we talk about, you really could expand into other things. It's like a first principles thing. As long as you understand the first principles, you can kind of apply that to different types of real estate. So You're kind of like junior analyst in some sense. And it's a very good place to practice kind of your financial analyst skills, because it can be simple, honestly.
Right. Well, on the simple side of things, I would say the first thing to think about is if you even are starting to explore it, is try to think of it as what kind of return on investment or yield am I going to get, right? So it'd be like earning an interest rate on something at the bank, or a stock pays a dividend. If I buy this real estate and it costs me X to get in, X to maintain, I get some sort of rental income. You figure all those things out, and there's some formulas we can talk about here in a second. But what is my true yield? Because at the end of the day, if you are going to do local rental real estate, you have to be aware that there are some risks and costs, one of them being time management, to get into there. So you don't want to go into it thinking, oh man, I'm going to make 10, 15%, and it ends up being 2.
Yes, especially, yes. Yeah, I think step number 1 is a good, either you write out a calculation or a good feel for what you call a cap rate in real estate investing, but it's essentially just a yield. So if you're putting $100,000 into a property, you take out, you figure, okay, $100,000, here's how much gross rent I will end up getting minus the occupancy. So if it's 90% occupancy, everything's not going to be full 100% of the time. Even at 90% occupancy, that's 1 year of over a 10-year time frame that you won't have rent coming in. So you need to factor that in, because that's money that's not coming in, minus your other expenses. So maintenance, which you have to maintain, which we'll talk about in a second, your taxes and your insurance. Taxes and insurance, it depends on where you are. If you're in Florida, it's uncapped. So, if a property ends up getting appraised higher, your rates go up. Like your taxes are going to grow commensurate with the increase in the appraised value of the home. Same thing with your insurance. I mean, if it goes up, your insurance goes up. That's pretty much going to go up over time. And then maintenance, which is always like the wild card, it is going to take something to maintain the place over time. What is that? I mean, I think 1% of the home's value is probably on the low side. I think you could just as easily say it's more like 3% of the home's value annually. That doesn't mean that every single year you spend 3%. Maybe 1 year you spend 1%, and then the next year you have to fix the roof or something. So it kind of goes in waves. Mm-hmm. But I would say generally something like 2%, 3% would be a good expectation to throw in for maintenance. So once you figure all that stuff out,
so you have all,
and it spits out your kind of net at the end. You just divide the net by what you paid, and that gives you your cap rate, your yield, basically. If that's 1%, you've got no room for error. Things have to work out because there's just no room for error. If that's 12, well, hey, you got a little bit of give there. If it doesn't go perfectly, you're still doing pretty well with that, purchasing that property, I guess you would say.
So do you think there's I hate to say target yield, but a yield that would be at least leaning towards this actually could be a good investment, some good future cash flow and a piece of property? Is it 4%? Is it, you mentioned 12%? Do you think there's a number that people should shoot for?
Well, I think some of it is, your personal preference. I would say, if you want 2%, by all means. I just think there's better ways to get 2% than investing in real estate. And also just because, I hear a lot, well, so-and-so is, if I leverage it up, but if you leverage it up 5-to-1 and you take something that starts at 2% yield and leverage it up 5-to-1, it sounds great. I'll get 10% yield on my money, but the expenses are leveraged too. So if you have a bad 6-month streak and you're coming out of pocket $4,000 a month, and there goes all your kind of cash type gains. So you're leveraging the reward, but you're also leveraging all of the risk by 5. So you got to keep that in mind.
And to clarify real quick, leveraging meaning I'm going to borrow more or spend less up front, especially now in this environment when rates are pretty low.
Correct.
So you can get more. So you could leverage more of your money at a lower interest rate. Yeah.
So $100,000, you put $20,000 down. That's like 5-to-1 leverage. Like you're leveraging your money 5 times. You're getting $100,000 worth of, I guess, purchasing power for $20,000. But like I said, that still leverages your cost as well. Your cost, you're not paying the cost on a $20,000 property. You're paying the cost on a $100,000 property. As long as the cash flow is coming in, you're fine. But you get a bad tenant, or heaven forbid, like the eviction moratorium is a great example. Like if you can't evict somebody for 6 months, and even if none of that was going on, it's not easy to evict people. If you go 4 months, you can't evict somebody because of just the process of eviction, and then they ruin it on the way out. Well, that's $20,000 or something that it would, however much it would end up being. It's quite a bit. That's a big risk. So you have to factor that kind of stuff in. But to kind of get back to your question, what's a good one? I've seen people say kind of a rule of thumb of like 1% a month. So basically 12%. So if you buy $100,000 property, you want to try to rent it out for $1,200 a month, essentially. That's 12%. That gives you plenty of leeway. Good luck finding anything that actually will give you that today, because things are so expensive.
Well, yeah. And that's a net. That's what you need your net to be.
Well, you could get that to be the gross. I mean, because that does give you a little bit of leeway to subtract expenses out. So if you're just doing like a quick, like, is this worth it? I could buy it for $200, but I could rent it for $2,400. Right. Let me dig in a little bit more. It's kind of like a quick screen.
Right.
Is it worth it? But the chances of you finding something like that, like publicly listed, I guess you would say, is probably zero. Maybe if you know the ins and outs and you can find foreclosures, or you can just like, knock on doors and like, be aggressive with it maybe, but it would take work to find something like that. Certainly not a passive thing. So how much is a good yield? So that's kind of a rule of thumb. I think that it's almost impossible now to find something like that. So where do you fall on that? I would say the alternative to doing just like one house. So instead of putting all of your eggs into one house, leveraging up 5 to 1, using debt, relying that one tenant will continue to pay you. Nothing goes on with this one place, this one property in this one place on this one street with this one tenant. The alternative is there are real estate investment trusts, which is just, most of them are publicly traded. They don't have to be. But a real estate investment trust is just a collection of real estate investments put into a trust. It pays out income. There's all kinds of ins and outs. But there are real estate investment trusts that just specifically invest in single family homes and rent them out. That's what they do. I think there might be 3 big ones that are out there. Mm-hmm. So the alternative would be take your money, spread it amongst the 3, let's say, or pick one, whatever. What is the yield on that? That way, if you do something like that, what is a yield on that? How much time does it take? You get a lot more diversification, professional management team, professional financing, all the benefits come with being really big. What do I get from that versus concentration? So if let's say that's 4% or something, how much extra would you want to get on top of that for the risk? So if things are yielding 4%, which is net, that's what comes to you, you'd have to say, well, how much net what would I want my cap rate to be on this real estate investment to compensate me for taking on the risk of concentration in one thing? Is that 7? Is it 8? Right. Is it 10? It would have to be above 4, because otherwise, what's the point? There's no point in doing that.
Right.
So that's what I would say is kind of the.
Hang on 1 second. We have a guest. Oh, sorry, we're doing a little AVID chat. I'll catch up with you. Shout out to Marvin Gay.
Got a little drop in.
Not the singer. The singer.
Got a little drop in.
But yeah, happened to be in the building, so I feel bad that I can't talk to him, but being live and recording here. So back to what you're saying. So real estate investment trust, and basically comparing whether or not it's valuable to go in on your own, so to speak, take on the risk of owning an individual rental house here in St. Petersburg or wherever you live, versus letting some other professional unit do it and just kind of buying into it, being a part of it, and essentially just sitting back and seeing what happens.
I mean, that's truly passive in some sense, that you put the money in there and it goes. I would say if you're right. Like I'm generally bullish on single family homes as an investment, let's say. Like I think in general, they'll do pretty well, but I don't want to do the work. This is like saying, do you want to own an index fund of the S&P 500 because you think in general, I think stocks will do well, although I'm not really knowledgeable enough to pick out the ones that will do better on average. So, which is insanely difficult to do. I don't know how to do that. I'm generally bullish on U.S. stocks, like S&P 500. So I'm going to buy an S&P 500 index because I think I'm generally bullish on stocks. I think they'll go up. I don't know which ones will go up more than others. Some will do really bad. Some will do really good, but I think I'll get about the average of that. If I'm generally bullish on single family homes as an investment. I just think that they will go up over time. They're a good investment, whatever you think the case is. But I don't want to take the time to go and actually do the work of managing a property and picking out ones that are good or bad, or doing this net operating income calculation, or figuring out a cap rate, or learning the taxes and all this stuff. Then I would say you're probably just better off purchasing some kind of REIT or something. Yeah. But if you're just dying to get in, to buy a house and do all this work and figure all this stuff out, I mean, by all means, if you're doing it as a hobby just because it's a fun thing to do, well, that's a different conversation. But if you're doing it to actually make some money, first things first, you'd want to know, what is my, expected kind of cap rate on this property?
Well, and let's be honest, some people do have the skill to do that, as well as even the upkeep, the maintenance, the remodeling, things that can help bring down, I guess, the cost of entry, if you will, into buying the property. So another thing that popped into my mind, if that's the scenario and you've done the math, it seems right, and now you're owning the property, one thing to do is almost, I hate to use the word, but you have to almost be a little bit of a slumlord, meaning have some sort of process in place and documents that say, okay, I'm going to raise rent, once a year, whether it's 3% or 5%. I'm going to impose late fees. If you're going to move out, I need 60 days notice, or I keep the security deposits. Very similar to how, like, we're in a commercial building here, and that's preset in stone for the life of the lease. We know we're getting these increases, and as a commercial owner here anyway, that helps the value of the property, because you have these leases with all these things set forth, which is easy to not do in personal residential real estate and just kind of wing it. Like, well, let me just get the person in and I'll raise rent next year, so to speak. Right. So long way of having a process to increase your net operating income on the rental properties is going to play a big role. Yeah.
I mean, if you got to be professional about it, and you got to run it like a business, which I just think it's not passive at all. I think that's a horrible term or an expectation for people to have. I don't know where that ever came from, but somehow this idea that investing in single family homes is passive income is insane to me, because it's not passive at all. Like, it's very active. You're going to have to, you can get passive income, you just might be making any money. So you'll have stuff coming in. I guess you can call that passive income, but if my passive income is 20,000 and my expenses are 30,000, well, I'm not actually making any money. I guess in some sense, you have some passive income because you're not doing anything, but you're not actually making any money. If you really want to make money with it and like really make it like a good investment, it just takes work, and it takes some, you have to deal with people, and you're going to have to do background checks, and you're going to have to kick people out, and you're going to have to deal with bad tenants, and you're going to have to I just don't know how you're going to get around doing that if you're going to be the person that's buying and managing the individual properties. That's not to say you can't make money doing it, but it is a professional business. And I would think people who do it as a profession would be the first people to tell you that if just some house pops up 2 streets over from you, it doesn't mean that you should go buy it and rent it out as you do your 40-hour week job somewhere else. Like, they would tell you, you're gonna have to work at it. It's not a every once in a while type of thing. Yeah.
It's like you said, it's not passive, it's heavily active, but maybe the fact you get the check every month is passive, which is totally different. So, So we talked about cap rates. We've talked about running it efficiently like a professional. Anything else stand out as a way to help improve the likelihood of making money in real estate?
I think the biggest thing is, the price that you buy it at is going to make the biggest difference. So if you are going into something and you're buying it now, and you do, some kind of expectation as to what your cap rate is going to be, and it's, 1% or something, 2%, the idea that you're going to be able to go in and do some kind of value add and do some kind of stuff that will bring that up to like 8% is probably very unlikely, unless it's, really run down, or you found some super, some gem or something. But just by definition, those things are very rare, and it almost take a certain amount of luck and a certain amount of know-how in order to do that. And I just think it's highly unlikely. I think you're better off, if you're going to do this, try to find things that have decent cap rates on the way in. There's a number of ways that you can do that. Obviously, the price of something's for sale is out in the open. This is how much it would cost me. This is how much it would cost me to buy this place, plus all my expenses of purchasing it. So that's my top line number. As far as what you could rent it out for, you can just do research in the area. What are people renting things for? But also on Zillow, sometimes they do like a rental estimate of what they think you could rent it at.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you could say, well, that's way off. But how off could it be? Like if you have to take that rental estimate and double it in order for it to make sense for you, you just have to be realistic that it's probably unlikely. $100 here, $200 there, or something, 10% maybe, but doubling it it's just probably unlikely.
And Zillow actually is a great example because, now they've changed the site so much over the years that it'll give you rent estimates, estimated cost of maintenance, ballpark insurances, taxes. So it almost does some mini cap rate right there on the first page. Just scroll through it and get some information. You want to make sure you add other things in there to make sure they're accurate, but that's a good place to start too, just as a quick resource.
Yeah, it's not like a net operating income calculation is very easy to do. Like it's basically subtraction, addition, subtraction, and a little bit of division. Like it's about as simple as it gets. You just have to say you're kind of determining the inputs hypothetically as what they would be. But even that's not difficult to do because, taxes and insurance are probably, I wouldn't say they're easy, but you can do a pretty good job of guessing those. If you say it's 2% on the value to maintain it over time, well, there you go. There's your number there. And then, how much could I rent it for? Well, Zillow has a rental estimate. And you start with that and see where it ends up. If it ends up at 0.5%, well, move on. Maybe that's not the place. But if it's at 9, well, hey, maybe we need to dig into this a little bit more. The first thing that I would say, if I found something that I thought would yield like 9%, I would wonder, okay, why me? Why am I the one finding this versus everybody else who's out here doing this? Am I missing something that I'm unaware of in here? So it's tough, man, especially when you put a ton of debt on it to try to make it a good investment. Like it's a tough business, extremely tough business, especially now when it seems like every Joe Blow is like wanting to invest in real estate. So the idea that you're going to find deals now is when you want to be investing in it is when everybody thinks it's like, what a horrible investment. That's when you need to be like, now I need to start looking around.
Yeah. That's a counterintuitive opposite approach, really, which is similar to investing and other things as well. Right. So, well, I think it's been a good chat. Hopefully these things have helped. If you are thinking about real estate, and to keep these in mind, if we can be of assistance with cap rates or thoughts or anything else, reach out to us. Let us know. It's a good chat, Jack.